It's either nerf or nothing. Or probably some people out there will be kind of miffed or something. Hey guys, MasakoX here. On many an occasion up until this point, Dragon Ball Super has actually been a breath of fresh air in some respects, but quite a lot of the time it has raised some concerns. And most of these concerns have stemmed from the very fact that we've been introduced to some very super powerful characters. And I mean really powerful. I'm looking at you, Jiren, Hit, Merge, Zamasu, and Bororetta. Or there are those characters that are actually achieving certain feats in a matter of hours, which took our main characters, who we grew up with, years to master or even try to comprehend. I think you know who I'm talking about here, the Universe 6 Saiyans. Now, granted, I'm pretty sure that this might probably be down to their genetics, as I've explained in many videos before, but it would be very nice for Toei or Toriyama or someone else to actually try and explain it properly in the canon, instead of just leaving it to us to guess, really. Now let's take a look at one of the two biggest troublemakers in this regard, Jiren. To say that our favourite alien, with his glorious space alien booty, is just a bit strong and powerful is a bit of an understatement. In fact, it's probably one of the biggest understatements that you could ever possibly make. He makes gods of destruction tremble in his wake. Something which is almost close to impossible, not even the likes of Goku or Hit. You know, the guy who can actually give Dio a run for his money in terms of stopping time. Neither of them could get a hit in. I mean, okay, Goku could get one hit in Ultra Instinct. That was it. In fact, I can't see a single scuff mark anywhere on that alien physique. I understand that this is all his thing, him being really super strong. That's his shtick. However, from a narrative standpoint, it really doesn't lend much to the imagination. Now, I would like to bring up something Haverock and I actually discovered on my Discord channel from a user called HolyMountain. HolyMountain sent us a lot of competent and really relevant information concerning my color theory video, as well as many other things, some of which I will actually revisit in the future in actual subsequent videos. So I'd just like to say thank you, HolyMountain, for contributing. So when the conversation between ourselves and HolyMountain touched the subject of Jiren, here's how he responded. And remember, this is all to do with color theory, so if you want to bone up on that, check out my video on the subject. Jiren is root chakra only. Jiren is the most protected, someone who has perfected vitality and ability. He's impenetrable, and you cannot defeat him with root chakra. He's like the Hulk. The only way to defeat him is with a stronger spirit, which perfectly reflects what we've seen so far from Belmod. Now, speaking of the Incredible Hulk, it's not just Dragon Ball fans who are obsessed with power scaling and power levels and comparing one character with another character in terms of strength. I myself am a recovering power level addict, as it really appeals to my love for statistics. It's one of those tasks that really seems to me quite difficult, especially these days. Once you get into the realms of Dragon Ball Super and you get all the different forms and then Kais and all these fusions, it becomes borderline impossible. It's a very common thing in the Western superhero community as well. Death Battle. Need I say more? In fact, when asked the question, which character is stronger in the Marvel Universe, the Hulk or Thor, one of the Hulk's creators, Stan Lee, actually came out and said quite categorically the following statement. It depends on who's writing the story. If the writer is a Hulk fan, he will be stronger. If he's a Thor fan, he will be stronger. And yes, I understand that this may not be one of the most satisfying answers that anyone could actually wish to receive, especially for Dragon Ball fans. But honestly, this kind of makes sense. It's up to Toriyama to decide who is the strongest depending on the situation and what the plot calls for. For example, during the Cell Saga, it is ultimately Gohan who is the strongest character out of all of them because that's where the plot is going. It was all confirmed once he stepped out of the Room of Spirit and Time. Once his time was up and we actually ended that arc, then we moved on to the next arc and we found out that Goku was the strongest character again, to face off against Majin Buu. Some other characters were quite strong too, but at the end of the day, it was Goku that dealt the final blow against Kid Buu. But then of course, we then get the likes of Vegito, and that's just there for entertainment and just to see what kind of thing Fusion can actually bring to the table. And oh boy, Vegito was strong. And why does it keep changing all the time, Masako? It's because really, it's all about the stakes. The stakes always need to be raised. If you keep making things spectacular each and every arc, then with the subsequent arc, you need to make things even more spectacular. It would be really boring to send out someone like Goku to fight against the likes of Frieza forces or something like that. But then granted, that is actually quite entertaining when you actually bring the B tier people like the Z fighters to fight them. That can actually be quite compelling. But Goku's purpose is to take on the A tier warriors, the ones that are capable of destroying civilizations, planets, and galaxies. That's what he's meant to do. At this point, Jiren is nothing but the zenith of about 30 years of antagonistic power development. And you want proof of this? Just look at how powerful Raditz seemed to be when we first saw him. Then about Nappa. Then this guy. They all seemed insurmountably powerful when we first see them. Then we get Frieza, who is the ultimate definition of the final boss, who can actually destroy an entire planet. That had never been seen before. Dragon Ball Z was the thing that took us all out into space, and it proved once and for all that Goku, who we all thought was really powerful and could take on any foe he wished to, was just an insignificant speck in the grand scheme of things, especially against the likes of Frieza. But that was his next challenge, to go out into space and get stronger. The stakes were raised. Granted, Toriyama didn't really know where the series was going to go at the time, because back then, and kind of right now, he kind of goes by a chapter-to-chapter mentality. But when you actually look at the comparison between Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z in terms of its growth and scope, the difference is completely insane. One moment we're talking about overthrowing world governments, the next minute we're actually talking about galactic tyranny. That gap's kinda big. As he created each chapter, Toriyama's definition for the ultimate villain against Goku had to change and evolve and adapt. What worked before couldn't necessarily work now. The goalposts had to be changed all the time, and that, unfortunately, is a very big symptom of his writing style. But having said that, you do get some very compelling and really crazy villains. I mean, Kid Buu was just pure madness, utter chaos, that all of our characters had to deal with in some way. Someone who couldn't be reasoned with, who someone had no charm or anything like that. You just had to defeat him. After all of that, Beerus seems like the only logical answer. And for the first time in the entire series, we got an antagonist that was just far too much for our heroes. Not one single power-up could actually take on this guy and they could win. Not even the likes of Super Saiyan God. Sure, Goku was able to actually triumph over some certain struggles, but ultimately, Battle of Gods really proved to us that at this point, Dragon Ball Super was going to be a very different kettle of fish. Even though we weren't aware of Super's existence, it laid down the groundwork about Goku actually having to come across challenges that he might not necessarily win over the first time. And then we also got a previous antagonist, Frieza, who actually got his revenge for real this time. He got the jump over Vegeta, something of which the actual prince is really susceptible to, and ultimately defeated our heroes by destroying the planet Earth. Yeah, and I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling Saiyans and that pesky angel. The stakes were raised. Then we got the fight with Hit in the Universe 6 arc, where he kinda let Goku technically win. You know, despite showing incredible strength and the ability to stop time. We hadn't seen time manipulation like this since the days of Goldo and the Ginyu Force, but only this time, this was far more polished. Goku and friends got lucky again. And then we got this jerk who actually had to just become literal weather in order to best our heroes. Once again, our heroes got lucky and it showed that they had friends in very high places. And this all takes me to one of my favorite aspects of Dragon Ball Super. It proves that our heroes aren't the strongest in the Omniverse, which would be really weird and convenient considering there are 12 different universes out there. And if ours are actually really strong and the absolute strongest, then what's the point of visiting all these different universes then? There are still challenges out there for Goku and friends. Do you honestly think that you got that in the likes of the Jump special? I mean, how can you take the likes of Arca completely seriously? He's quite clearly a monster of the day. Not someone you could build an entire arc around. That's not raising the stakes, that's just a party trick. Jiren in his current state is just strong, menacing, and silent. But honestly, at this point in Super, it's actually quite a refreshing change of pace. You know, from all those constantly monologuing villains that like to hear the sound of their own voice. You know, around that time when Super Buu had that phase where he liked to talk incessantly, and don't even get me started on the likes of Zamasu. Jiren's silence is actually kind of appreciated. An antagonist who's actually quite mute. A character of action who just likes to get the job done, pure and simple. He's just here to do a job and ensure his universe's survival, not for pleasure, like Goku. In that regard, he's even less like Goku than the likes of Vegeta or Hit, which actually makes him the perfect antagonist. He is the complete polar opposite to Goku. As for the fact that he scares the gods, Well, it just goes to show that the power scale is getting rather ridiculous. But you know what? That's actually part of the charm of the series. Yeah, it is rather random and it does tend to go off in certain tangents, but that kind of makes what Dragon Ball is what Dragon Ball is. Well, but Masako, wouldn't it be better if the series just went back to basics and just went about fighting then? Well, yeah, I do see your point. And there was a series that did try to do just that, and it didn't really work. In fact, it completely flopped. From a narrative point of view, it's really hard to write villains that are more straightforward and basic and not as powerful as what we've already seen. Anything less than taking on a god would not really leave a lasting impression on our viewers. It's not impossible though. You would have to try and absolutely nail the story in terms of its dialogue, its drama, its pacing, and what it brings to the table, if it can bring some fresh ideas. You can't just rely on the fighting to tide you over. It would be very hard for Toei to actually pull that off, and honestly, I think they would like to stick to the formula and not really take that many risks with the overall story. They would only actually try and branch out when it comes to the likes of the secondary characters. Goten was completely and utterly destroyed, and Pan, who actually really endeared herself to the audience at the end of Z, she was just so cute, was completely and utterly ruined the moment she opened her mouth in the very first few episodes of GT. Super is only lucky to get away with what it gets away with because of the fact that the end of Dragon Ball Z was so reserved and pretty much quiet, if you ask me. It was just very contained, it was just a simple 3 or 4 episodes at the Tenkaichi Budokai, nothing grand, just pure and simple. It left things pretty open-ended, and it was up to the likes of Super and GT to actually march forward and try and think of new ideas and new powers. In the end though, Dragon Ball is one of those shows that cannot go backwards. It always has to be constantly marching forwards in terms of its scope. The enemies have to become all the more stronger and all the more intimidating. The one thing I can appreciate about Zamasu's character is that he tried to instill some kind of philosophical debate in what's really a kid's show. You know, talking about the definition of justice and what it means to actually serve it. That was actually quite thought-provoking for that kind of series, but it kind of fell flat in my opinion because the character was an outright jerk and entirely unlikable. But for now, I think that's where we'll leave things. But don't worry, there is plenty more to talk about in the next part of this discussion coming up next week. Next time, we're going to be talking about the likes of Universe 6 Saiyans, as well as the power level inconsistencies for Team Universe 7, as well as Super Saiyan Blue. Be sure to stay tuned for that one coming up next Tuesday. So what do you guys think? Did you find this initial part to our discussion rather interesting? What do you expect me to cover in the next part? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe. Catch you later!